it's Margot, and today I'm bringing you the real-life holiday horror story of the murder of a vibrant young mother and aspiring domestic violence counselor at the hands of her own abusive husband, who then went on to force her kids to open their Christmas gifts in front of her corpse. This topic is sensitive, but it's important to talk about and to pay attention to. It only takes a moment of abuse to take a life. So if you're up for it, keep watching. In late 2011, 26-year-old Za'Zell Preston, known as ZZ to friends and family, was living in an apartment complex in Anaheim, California, with her 30-year-old dock worker husband, William Wallace, her infant son, born just 7 weeks earlier, and Za'Zell's 2 daughters from a previous relationship, who were then 8 and 3 years old. Za'Zell was a full-time student at Cypress College and was just weeks away from her graduation date. Her goal was to become a domestic violence counselor and to make a better life for herself and her family. I always try to get an idea of who the subjects that I'm talking about really are or were as individuals, not just as victims or perpetrators or statistics. In this case, I found that Za'Zell's Facebook page was still up, with quite a few public posts from the last couple years of her life. It's just a glimpse, but I'll start with the main impressions I'm left with as an outsider looking in. First off, it's obvious she loved her daughters dearly and was so proud and protective of them. She spent her final pregnancy and final year wondering what her little boy would be like. It breaks my heart they only got to know each other for less than 2 months. Za'Zell was artistic and beautiful just like her daughters, and a talented dancer by all accounts. Her Facebook posts indicate that she also may have dabbled in acting and modeling. She was afraid of killer whales and terrified of losing her babies. There were posts about her daughter nearly drowning in a pool earlier that year. 6 months pregnant, Za'Zell jumped in and saved her. She went to church and pride parades and girls' nights. This was a woman that could have been any of our friend, sister, daughter, granddaughter, cousin, auntie, niece, or mother. Was she perfect? No, none of us are. Observing from the outside, at least on social media, she appeared to have a beautiful life, and her goals were right there within her reach. She seemed strong and self-assured. Nobody would have looked at this woman and thought victim. The only posts that stood out to me as red flags that something was amiss were the ones that seemed to pertain to her relationship with her husband. 2011 was clearly an emotional roller coaster for Za'Zell that started out with posts saying things like, "I'm loving my bullshit-free life, I'm loving it," and seeming so happy on outings with her kids in February, with no mention of her husband. During this time, her husband, William Wallace, was incarcerated for domestic violence toward her. She was living alone with her 2 daughters in her apartment in Anaheim and seemed to be thriving. In July, as Wallace's release date drew near, Za'Zell posted a picture of herself with her abuser, captioned, "I love my baby so much," and another 2 weeks later captioned, "I can't wait to see my sexy-ass husband next week. I love my baby more than air." Obviously, she'd decided to take him back. The next day, she was venting about not wanting to have to fight another woman while 6 months pregnant because of comments on her husband's pictures. 3 days later, on July 29th, she posted, "I'm so happy my husband is home, thank you Jesus," with pictures of the 2 of them out and about, kissing like newlyweds a couple days later on July 31st. She mentioned they'd had a great time at a gospel concert. This wasn't the first time they'd reconciled after Wallace had been jailed for assaulting his wife. It had actually become a vicious cycle of repeated abuse, incarceration, and forgiveness over the course of their 3-year relationship. In 2008, Wallace was convicted of battery against a cohabitant, the cohabitant being Za'Zell. He was jailed for 45 days, put on probation, and was required to attend a batterer's treatment program. Soon afterwards, Za'Zell got a restraining order against him. Wallace was arrested at least twice for violating that restraining order. But he'd always convince her to forgive him, and that he was ready to change, and Za'Zell would even go visit him in prison. For the final time, in July of 2011, Za'Zell visited Wallace behind bars. He told her that he'd found Jesus and was going to live his life as a man of faith. Za'Zell, 6 months pregnant with his child, chose to believe him. and allowed him to move into her apartment. On August 11th, Za'Zell's Facebook post began taking a much darker tone. The first one simply reading, "I hate when I feel like this." Her husband had been home for less than 2 weeks. 2 days later, the nature of the problem became a bit clearer when she posted, "No matter how much you think somebody's going to change, things just get worse. When someone has no respect for you, they never will." The next day, she alarmingly posted, "Bye to my friends. I'm done with this life. It's my time to go." Comments on this post were even more worrisome, with Za'Zell saying, "I'm out of this effing place, don't nobody give a F, and I'm glad to do what I'm about to do." When it was suggested that she should find a quiet place and go pray, she commented, "Yeah, I feel you, but pray don't always work fast enough, man. For real, I will be dead before a prayer even works. This some real life stuff I'm talking about, man, for real." Her next public posts were photos of her looking very pretty and pregnant in front of some graffiti artwork, saying this art was beautiful to her and she wondered if her unborn son would be artistic. On October 23rd, she shared a picture of her husband and herself at a family party, with his arms around her cradling her pregnant belly in his hands, and maternity-style photos with her husband's family, who looked pretty happy about the new baby that would soon arrive. All of her photos depicted a seemingly happy family. On October 25th, she posted, "Please pray for my husband. I'm going crazy. I'm worried. I can't sleep or eat. God, please help us." Her public post ended on Halloween 2011, shortly before her baby boy was born. Less than 2 months later, on Christmas Eve, she was dead. So now that we know what was really going on behind the happy pictures and the joyful post, sporadically sprinkled with obvious cries for help, here's how Za'Zell spent her last night alive, pieced together from witness testimony at Wallace's trial. On Christmas Eve 2011, the couple attended a neighbor's holiday party. It's believed they may have both been intoxicated by the time they headed home. After they left the party, neighbors said that they could hear the two of them arguing with raised voices in the alley behind the apartment complex. Sadly, all 3 of Za'Zell's young children were present during the nightmare that happened next. The oldest child, just 8 years old at the time of her mother's murder, testified in court earlier this year to witnessing the following. She's now 18. Za'Zell and Wallace were arguing when they returned home from the party, and the confrontation turned physical. Wallace went into a rage. At one point, Za'Zell ran out of the apartment trying to escape. Wallace chased her down and dragged her back inside. A neighbor actually told police they saw Wallace pick up what looked like a person by the apartment complex's gate, as if he were carrying a dead body. It's assumed this was Za'Zell being carried back from her escape attempt. After re-entering the apartment, Za'Zell's daughter witnessed Wallace pushing Za'Zell into a glass table, which shattered. Wallace then had the little girl help him pull pieces of glass from Za'Zell's body. In the bathroom, according to Za'Zell's daughter, Wallace dropped her mother and her head hit the side of the toilet, hard. Her daughter testified, "After she hit the toilet and I think she was passed away, he just took her to the bedroom and put her down to sleep while she was deceased." She said she touched her mother and she felt cold. The next morning, Christmas morning, Za'Zell's girls got out of bed and went to their living room to open presents. According to the then 8-year-old daughter, Wallace dragged her mother's body from the bedroom into the living room and propped it up on the couch. He put sunglasses on the corpse and told the children, "Mommy ruined Christmas. She got drunk and ruined Christmas." The daughter testified, "I remember trying to touch my mom and she was just rock hard and cold. And I said, 'Mommy,' and she didn't respond." He then had the girls open their presents as if their mother were watching them. The kids tried to carry on as if nothing was out of the ordinary, though their mother was supposedly drunk and nothing felt right. I'm having trouble following Wallace's thought processes, so I can't give you explanations for most of his choices, but he eventually ended up calling 911 at around 9 o'clock on Christmas morning, feigning ignorance, and claiming his wife needed medical attention. When EMTs arrived, they were baffled to find Za'Zell's body slumped awkwardly on the couch wearing sunglasses, and clearly deceased for quite a while. They immediately alerted the police. Wallace first claimed she'd hit her head sometime earlier, and he didn't realize she was dead. An obvious lie. When police arrived, they found bloodstains throughout the apartment, holes in the wall as if it had been punched in, and a door ripped off its hinges. William Wallace was quickly arrested and held on $1 million bail for the next 9 years as he awaited trial. As much as I've read about this case, it's still unclear to me why it took nearly a decade for this to go to trial. The county pathologist, Aruna Singania, determined Za'Zell died from brain hemorrhaging due to one or more of the 6 blunt force blows to her head. It's unclear at exactly what point during the brutal assault inflicted on Za'Zell on the night of Christmas Eve that she'd actually succumbed to her injuries. Friends and family saw so many warning signs in this toxic relationship, but felt helpless to get Za'Zell away from her abuser. When Za'Zell told her mother and grandmother that she intended to marry Wallace, her mother, Za'Zell Preston, said they begged her not to marry the guy. Her grandmother, Sally Baker, said, "I told her I had a bad feeling about her marrying him." Za'Zell's relatives described Wallace as controlling and violent, saying he'd threatened to kill Za'Zell on multiple occasions. Her grandmother testified to finding Za'Zell lying in a fetal position in the street after one alleged beating. On another occasion, Za'Zell had to call a family member for help while hiding from her husband in a convenience store bathroom. Lori Galloway, a longtime friend of Za'Zell's who was also an Anaheim City Council member and ran a home for abused women and children, said Wallace regularly hit Za'Zell throughout the course of their relationship. She recalls she and others begged Za'Zell to leave her abuser. Ms. Galloway has said, "This is the story of a girl who had access to resources, but she thought she could handle it. These men are experts at apologizing. The women think they can change them." During Wallace's sentencing hearing earlier this year, Za'Zell's mother, Za'Zell, described her daughter's killer as a psychopath with a very short temper. Wallace had his own version of events, a couple of them actually. In court, Wallace's lawyer claimed he was falsely accused, telling jurors, "Mr. Wallace is being accused of something that is not his fault. You will hear about a relationship that was full of arguing and yelling, but also a lot of love." Wallace had told relatives that he was defending himself from Za'Zell, claiming she had attacked and bit him. In one version, she drunkenly fell on the glass table while he was defending himself from her attack. In another version, he didn't even try to defend himself. She just attacked him, then drunkenly fell on the table. He claims Za'Zell died from injuries after hitting her head. Wallace's attorney told the court that Za'Zell had died from drunkenly tripping and falling onto the glass table, shattering it. The defense tried to call witnesses' inconsistencies into question. At the beginning of the trial, the prosecutor told jurors that Wallace, on a phone call with Za'Zell's grandmother Sally on Christmas morning, said he and his wife had been drinking and, quote, "I tossed her around a bit," saying he then added that he was, quote, "on my way to the penitentiary." However, during the trial, Ms. Sally, now 90 years old, said she didn't recall Wallace saying the word tossing. She thought he'd said he and Za'Zell were drinking and horsing around. She also didn't recall him making a comment about going to the penitentiary. The defense also noted to the jury that the testimony of Za'Zell's now 18-year-old daughter appeared to conflict with comments she made to investigators at 8 years old, shortly after Za'Zell's death, that her mother had tripped and fallen into a table before Wallace could stop her. This was immediately after this small child had been left alone with her mother's killer and 2 even smaller children overnight and into the next day after witnessing the murder. I'd say repeating his version of events probably would have felt like the safe choice to her at that time. Wallace's attorney, Heather Moorhead, said Za'Zell's death was heartbreaking, but not Wallace's fault. Both of them were drunk, and the injuries that ultimately caused her death were not caused by Mr. Wallace, she said. There are no facts in this case that show Mr. Wallace intended to kill. The prosecution disagreed, describing Za'Zell's death as the culmination of a history of domestic violence carried out by Wallace, and noted he failed to call 911 despite his wife bleeding from a head injury. Senior Deputy District Attorney Heather Brown said he had been threatening to kill her for 3 years, and on Christmas he made good on those threats. She also told the jury that Wallace did what he always did, expecting Ms. Preston to survive like she always did. But this time she sadly didn't. In the end, the jury didn't buy now 39-year-old Wallace's self-defense story, and he was finally convicted on April 7, 2021, of second-degree murder. William Wallace was sentenced to 15 years to life behind bars, though he gets credit for the 9 years he's already served so far. He's been behind bars since he was arrested upon the discovery of Za'Zell's body on December 25, 2011. Za'Zell's mother, Za'Zell, spoke at his sentencing hearing, saying, "He beat and tortured my daughter and at the same time mentally assassinated her children. He showed her no mercy. Let's show him no mercy." In the aftermath of her daughter's murder, Za'Zell Preston became the guardian of her 3 grandchildren, who are now 18, 13, and 10 years old. About her daughter, Za'Zell says, "William Wallace robbed us of her knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Za'Zell was an amazing and talented young woman until he came along and took her from us forever." Za'Zell left behind a big family. They were important to her, and she was important to them. Her funeral was attended by many. Her service went on for well over 2 hours in celebration of her life. A local journalist in attendance reported that she looked beautiful and at peace, laid out in a white dress with a jeweled bodice, a pink shawl draped around her shoulders. Pink was Za'Zell's favorite color. On either side of her casket were arrangements of pink flowers, including one that formed her nickname, ZZ, in large block letters. The reporter described her face as angelic and unblemished, the brutality surrounding her death nowhere in evidence. Friends in attendance expressed their wishes that they could have done more to help her. After Wallace's murder conviction, Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer said in a statement, "A young mother finally losing her life after years of violence at the hands of her husband is a heart-wrenching tragedy. That heartbreak is only exacerbated by the fact that her children witnessed much of the violence and were forced to celebrate Christmas in the presence of their dead mother. This is not a Christmas memory any child should be forced to have. We all have an obligation to speak up against domestic violence where the victims are so fiercely controlled by their abusers. The cycle of domestic violence is a vicious one, and I want every victim of domestic violence to know that they are not alone. No one should have to live in fear of violence in their own home." That's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this story and will come back for more. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and bring your friends, family, COVID pod, cult members, invisible friends, or enemies. And if you or someone you know is a victim or perpetrator of domestic violence, please reach out for help before it's too late. The number for the Domestic Violence Hotline is currently on your screen, and my contact info is always in the description box if you need help finding resources or just need someone to listen. Thanks so much for watching.